This is a Seagull chronograph movement that I've had for a couple of weeks now, and it tends to run about 10 or 15 seconds a day fast. It's a non-hacking movement anyway, so it doesn't really make that much difference, but 15 seconds a day is a bit much. So I bought the swan neck version of this just so that I could regulate it if this had happened. So this is what we're going to try and have a go at today. Now, although it runs 15 seconds fast on the time grapher, I'm not going to set it back down to 0 because in different positions it does slow down quite a bit. So let's take about 10 seconds off of that if I can. Of course, you can buy tools for this kind of job, but I've not been able to find one that's 10-sided and 35.5mm across. So it's not too much of a big deal to get out in the shop and fashion one up. The final size I'm aiming for here is 35.5 across the flats. It's going to take a bit of deburring and cleaning up to work properly, but it should do the job eventually. It's only got to do it once. This wasn't actually screwed in very tight at all. Taking it off carefully. I don't really want to get any fingerprints on the underside of the case back. And then once I get the plastic movement holder out, the movement's going to be loose in the case, but that's as far as I'm going to take it down. The adjusting screw I need to get to is right up by the balance wheel at 12 o'clock. You can see like a little omega shaped spring just on the left side of the balance wheel. That's where the adjusting screw is. Now this should be easy to adjust. The watch is actually in the time grapher, that's what you can hear ticking, not the movement. but the adjusting screw is pretty much in the middle of the screen there. It's that higher headed small screw. The swan neck spring is what it screws into, two blued screws holding it down onto the balance bridge. But that screw, and I could see this through the case back anyway, that screw is already a long way in and it needs to go in further to slow it down. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to get that screw to screw inwards anymore, but let's see. Okay, well I can unscrew the adjusting screw, and being on the time grapher I can see that it does speed up. It's up to about 30 seconds a day now. So the adjusting screw does work, it's just a matter of whether I can get it to go in any further than it already was. And it won't go in any further than it already was. The screwdriver just cams itself out. So somehow I've got to take those parts off and change them in some way so that I can get more travel on that adjusting screw. Not much, just a bit. Now, as fancy as they try to make these, there really is sort of no cost spent on finishing. All the parts are sort of rough forged or stamped. The Geneva waves on that bridge haven't even been machined, they've been stamped on. The screws themselves, they're not blued steel, they're steel screws that have been somehow painted blue. So they're going to be easy to scratch, and you can see they're already chewed up anyway from being put together or manufactured. So I'm not really worried about damaging any of this finish, because you can't see it anyway once you're looking at it in without any magnification. But what I really don't want to do is be dropping any of these screws. They are really so tiny that I can't see them with my own eyes. I have to wear magnifiers or glasses to even get sight of them. Putting the screwdrivers in as well is tricky, because I'm actually looking at the computer screen to get any idea whether or not it's in the slot, and they are so small that trying to turn it without the screwdriver coming out the slot takes a bit of practice. Also, gripping those screws too tightly will tend to make them ping out of the tweezers. But there we are, the part is successfully off. So I'm just going to push that crank in the direction that I want it to go to make sure that it does actually slow the watch down, and it did. Brought it down to around 20 seconds a day slow. So if I can get some more adjustment on that screw, it probably will have a result. What I should have done was use a pin vise on that adjusting screw. It took me about 15 minutes to get it that far out, but as it started to wobble around, you can't keep the screwdriver in it anymore. But I got it out eventually. And yes, that is office grade blue tack that I'm using. I don't have the proper stuff because I'm not a watchmaker. Foolishly thinking that this part was made out of brass, the first attempt was to try and counterbore that hole so that the screw head would disappear into the hole. That's a 0.7mm drill. If it was brass, it probably would have gone in there by hand, but it's not brass. It's some sort of brass plated steel. It's actually quite hard, and that was never going to succeed. So gripping the thing in some parallel pliers and using the smallest needle file that I had, I managed to scallop out some of that material, stopping just short or just on the countersink of the two holes. The next task was to try and get that little screw back in, because I've now damaged some of the threads on the entrance to that hole. So this was a lot of fiddling around. I'm about to push too hard on this screw and it will ping from the screwdriver and disappear. I was lucky not to lose it. So after that near accident, I decided on a different approach. I managed to get that screw into the smallest pin vise that I have, and having done that, it pretty much went in at the first attempt. It was then a case of cleaning off a lot of that blue tack and screwing it in the hole, jacking out that hole because it was full of blue tack, which is necessary to stop the parts from flying around, but a bit messy afterwards. And it's pretty much ready to go back in. I'm going to have to try as best I can to get those holes lined up before I attempt to put the screws in. If it was a bit of steam pipe or something like that, or a cylinder head, then you can push the fasteners in and get them to go in the holes, but these screws are far too small to be pushing around. You want them to drop in the hole straight away. Once the mounting screws are tightened up, it was then a matter of winding in that adjusting screw to get it back to approximately the same position it was when it came out, and then see what adjustment we can get. This is now back on the time grapher. There's plenty of gap underneath the head of that screw now, so it's got plenty of adjustment travel left in it, and I can adjust it live on the time grapher. So it's running a little bit too slow right now. Just unscrew the adjusting screw about 1/4 of a turn, get it to speed up a little bit, and then get rid of that hair on the screw. We don't want any of that filth in there, do we, when it's all closed up. Now what I'm really aiming for is about 5 seconds a day fast in this position. This is its fastest position. So if you try to set it on 0 in its fastest position, everywhere else it will be slow. So at least this will give me some opportunity to lay the watch down at night, face down. That will speed it up. If it tends to run slowly during the day, then you can speed it up at night, that kind of deal. But with a movement like that, I don't have any expectations that it's going to stay like this for very long. It's just not as bad as 10 or 15 seconds a day. And you can't hack the movement anyway, so you can't get the second hand dead on a precise time. But we'll see how this goes. At least if it does drift or it needs adjustment in the future, I seem to have all the kit to be able to do it, and then it will adjust. 2 days well spent.